其实我们这个节目已经准备大概2年了吧，然后我们很荣幸今天能够跟 FCSN 合作，把这一个相当动人的一部纪录片这算是相当早期台湾关心这个议题放到大荧幕上面的一个片子。后续当然还有相当多的影视著作所以我们可以看到这一部林正盛导演10年前的片子。好，那我们现在正式开始欢迎大家到今天的节目At the beginning, let me ask if anybody who does not speak Mandarin, can you maybe type in a chat box or if you can respond in a way. So if everybody is okay with Mandarin, we can go with the Mandarin. 所以我们今天就用国语来进行。I saw someone. Let's switch back to English. What we're trying to bring up is more like a screening plus extra activities. For example, today we invited Jackie Chang to introduce what ASD is and what you're going to expect in the film we're going to show today. And also we are glad to have our co-host Anna Wang. Before we bring up Jackie, we'll let Anna briefly introduce her organization. Then after the screening, we're glad to have Pauline Hsueh to moderate Q&A issue to sit through the whole session. So pretty much we'll end everything before 5:15 Pacific time. That's what we shoot for. I'll go through quickly, see how we got to this film. About a year ago, we started to introduce some health-related documentary. For example, in September, we have this 5G radiation-related topic. Then we have this virus that's about a bird's flu, even before this pandemic came up. And we learned a lot about the virus, about the vaccine. This year, after the shelter in place, we have this just dedicated for this COVID-19 topic. So that's also a very good introduction at the very beginning of this. Then after about half a year, we started to come back to this health-related issue. For example, end of last month, our Happy Birthday documentary talking about friendly birth labor environment. So that's a fun part. We start with this. We started this health-related, and for example, last week we talked about this tribute short film to an old director, Xin-Qi. It has a little bit touch to dementia at the end of the film, so that's how we get into this coming series, which I'm going to introduce to you. So the whole series, we call it AI. This is not related to artificial intelligence anyway. It stands for affection and inclusion. So the reason we started this series is we have ethnic groups, also, of course, of our family, father and daughter, father and son, mother and daughter. That's what you see. We have this series. Then we have some gender-related series. And finally, we started with today's program with this ASD-related. So we try to combine everything together under a single theme, which we call it AI, 爱与包容. That's how we construct the whole series. And today you can see this is our early version of a flyer, and we have 4 series. This is pretty much the beginning of the new series. You saw the trailer about My Dear Father for next week, and there are more to come next year. So stay tuned for our dementia-focused series. Before I get into too much detail, let's bring up Anna. Give us some words or introduce your organization.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Anna Wang. I'm a parent of a young with autism. He actually may not be so young anymore. He is already 31 years old. I have always been an advocate for people with disabilities, and we founded an organization, Friends of Children with Special Needs, 华人特殊儿童之友会，是in 1996, and that we are actually going to celebrate our 25th anniversary this. And we started with 10 families, and now we are serving over 1,000 families in the San Francisco Bay Area. We have programs that serve children all the way to adults, to seniors, for people with developmental disabilities. But most important of all, we started as a family support organization, and that is a big focus of ours. And currently, because of COVID, we are meeting all the families virtually every week for 3 to 4 hours a week on Fridays. And we were able to help families all through the United States. Sometimes even Indian families come to our meeting to get information to help their children or loved ones with developmental disabilities. So we are very happy about this film festival regarding people with autism. And this is our first experience, and certainly has been great so far. And we look for more collaboration with CK in the future.
Thank you very much, Anna. It's our honor to cooperate with FCSN on this very first ASD related film. And then let me bring up Jackie. I welcome Jackie. Let me just read a little bit on the introduction. So Jackie Chang is a licensed marriage and family therapist in San Jose, who specializes in treatment for individuals and families struggling with autism and other mood disorders. Let us welcome Jackie. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So as CK said, my name is Jackie Chang. I have a private practice in San Jose, California. My specialization is autism and mood disorders. I actually spent I'm on my 9th year now, I think, working with families and individuals in the autism community. So for a great deal of my career, I actually exclusively worked in ABA services, which is applied behavioral analysis. So this is the early developmental treatment for children on the autism spectrum. It's very highly behavioral therapy based. And now in my own private practice, I primarily work around social communication, strengthening, and then also working a lot with young adults as well, who have kind of reached that point in their life where they need extra support to be more independent in kind of their day-to-day activities in adulthood. So it's a great opportunity for me to be here. CK, thank you so much. Appreciate you reaching out to me. And I guess I'll go ahead and start my short presentation. Is that okay, CK?
Sure.
All right. So I actually create a little PowerPoint. So let me go ahead and pull that up real fast. And my PowerPoint presentation is pretty much going to go over some of the common misconceptions and myths around autism spectrum disorder, and then a brief introduction in terms of what actually ASD is as well. Okay, so this is my contact information. If there's any questions that people have after screening the film, you are free to direct your questions to me. CK, I will also email you this slide deck. So if you need to show this information again, feel free to. Anna, I would love to connect with you at some point. My families and individuals who I work with, oftentimes, especially now during COVID-19, being indoors and kind of away from their regular social support systems, it's always nice to know that there are other community resources that are still connecting virtually for these types of individuals and families. So I would love for us to also trade information at some point. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and get started here. So this is the diagnostic criteria, which is pulled from the DSM, which is kind of like the holy Bible of diagnoses of mental health disorders and developmental disorders in the psychological community and medical community. It's up here called the DSM-5. They're on the 5th revision of this, so it's kind of ever-changing. So the first criteria for ASD diagnosis would be a persistent deficit in social communication and social interactions. And this is across multiple contexts. Now, an individual also has to meet all 3 of these criteria. These 3 being the first one, deficits in social emotional reciprocity. Now, what that might look like is, for example, they may not have back and forth conversations. Another one would be, let's say there's very much so reduced sharing of their own interest, right? Like it's a lot of just listening, or perhaps sometimes on the flip side, it could be oversharing as well. So a lot of just narrow interest and only talking about themselves. Number 2, deficits in nonverbal communicative behaviors that are used commonly in social interactions. So if you think about in, neurotypical social interactions, you would see, when you're talking to someone, there's eye contact, right? You're looking at each other, you're referencing one another's face. For an individual with ASD, you may not see a lot of that. There might be difficulties around holding eye contact or gaze. Other types of nonverbal communicative behaviors that they have deficits in might be understanding of social gestures or body language. So let's say, for example, if a person started to, cross their arms, or if a person started to, look around during a conversation, that individual with ASD may not register that, oh, this person's agitated because their arms are crossed, or that they are bored of this conversation because they begin looking around. The third one is deficits in developing, maintaining, and understanding relationships. So what that might look like is the lack of what we call theory of mind. Theory of mind is essentially the ability to take perspective of another person's view of things. So I like to call this thinking of you, thinking of me. Someone with autism may not have that capacity to think in another person's perspective. Most often, it might just only be their own. They have to be taught to understand that other people have different perspectives or could think about a situation in a different way, and that oftentimes other people, when you interact with them, are actually thinking about them just as they might think about the other person. Now, moving on to criteria B. So this is another part within the diagnostic criteria that has to be met. So we have the first one in criteria A, all 3 of those need to be there. And then criteria B, there needs to be a presentation of restricted, repetitive behaviors, interest or activities, okay? And 2 of the following would need to be met. So any kind of stereotypical repetitive movements or use of objects. This might look like hand flapping, for example. You might see this sometimes with children who are on the spectrum, adults as well. Hand flapping and looking at objects from the corner of their eye is another common one that you might see sometimes. So very stereotypical repetitive movements is what you would be seeing. There could also be repetitive parts of speech. They might really find a fond interest in a certain dialogue, or they might be very repetitive with the words that they choose or the sentence structure that they use. Number 2, insistence on sameness, inflexibility, adherence to routines, or ritualized patterns of behavior. For example, I remember when I worked with children, younger children, I had one particular client who loved lining up cars in a certain way, toy cars. So it also had to be, the same type of cars. They were always lined up the same order, by this type of categorization that they came up with. So there's going to be that inflexibility and adherence to a certain type of routine. 3, highly restricted, fixated interests that are abnormal in intensity. Now, what that means is you might like something, but they might like something, and the way that they like it is very specific and very detailed. So you could have an individual who really likes baseball, but an individual on the spectrum really likes baseball, but only cares about the baseball stats of, let's say, the San Francisco Giants, and that is it. So there's an intense interest, and it's highly restricted. 4 is hyper or hypo reactivity to sensory input or unusual sensory interest. So hyperactivity being, it kind of causes more of a reaction. And then hyporeactivity, which means there's actually not much of a reaction from the individual. So they could be highly sensitive to sensory input. So let's say, for example, they prefer certain types of materials or certain types of clothing because other ones, let's say, have a tag, and that really is too much sensory input for them. There could also be hyporeactivity, where you may see some individuals have a really high pain tolerance, for example. Like I mentioned earlier, with types of repetitive movements or different types of behaviors, this also falls into the one I gave the example of, where sensory input of looking at an object from the corner of their eye is actually highly interesting for them. So you may see some types of behaviors that are around the way that they look at objects as well. So a very long criteria so far. You'll see that it's very detailed. So then we go into criteria C, D, and E. For C, you also have to see these symptoms present in early developmental period. What that means is you have to see criteria A and criteria B symptoms essentially by the age of 8. So 8 or younger is what we define as early developmental period. Criteria D, symptoms cause clinically significant impairments in social functioning. So you will see that because of these types of deficits or difficulties, that the individual will have a significant impairment to kind of their day-to-day life and social functioning. And criteria E, that it's not better explained by an intellectual disability or global developmental delay. Now, the last part of the ASD diagnosis criteria is determination of severity level. And this is something new that was added for DSM-5. Prior to DSM-5, this actually was not a requirement. So now we also look at how much do these types of impairments impact an individual's ability to live independently. How much support do they need? So if we're looking at a 3 in severity, then the person needs very substantial support. A 2 is still substantial support. And then 1, we would say that person just needs some support. All right, so that's all of the diagnostic criteria. Now I'm going to move into some of the myths and truths of autism. Some of these myths you may have heard before. I think in recent years, autism awareness has grown substantially. So it's always kind of important to first and foremost remember that it is a spectrum. It's called a spectrum for a reason. It's because everyone on this spectrum is a little bit different and special than the next person. First myth is that there is a cure for autism. And this is absolutely not true. So unfortunately, there's no cure for autism, but there is ongoing treatment support in the terms of therapy and help for any type of developmental and social delay. Now, oftentimes, if it's diagnosed early enough, many children begin ABA services, applied behavioral analysis treatment, which at this moment is the most effective form of treatment support for those with ASD. It's very, very vigorous. It takes up a family and an individual's time, but it yields wonderful results. And lastly, for most families, autism is a lifetime journey of learning and adaptation. You know, it's not something that you just get treatment for a certain period of time and you're one and done. It really is an ongoing process. And as the individual ages, there will always be new challenges and new difficulties and new ways to learn and get past those types of hurdles. Another myth is that autism is an intellectual or mental disability. So there is a very big distinction for autism. It's not an intellectual disability by any means. It's not a mental disability by any means. It's actually categorized as a neurological and a developmental disorder. So which that means neurologically, individuals with autism have abnormalities in their brain structure. So their brain is just naturally different than a neurotypical individual. And then in terms of mental health, you know, there might be different types of neurotransmitter levels, but intellectually, individuals with autism vary to a wide degree. Some comorbid disorders are common in terms of mental health. So it's not to say that intellectual disability doesn't exist within autism. That is something that definitely can exist. Around 31% of children who have autism also have some type of intellectual disability as well. Other comorbid disorders in terms of mood disorders or in terms of other neurological developmental disorders do also exist. And they are actually very common in the ASD population. ADHD is one, anxiety and depression. Anxiety and depression often show up when the individual begins to age into an age where the social expectations start to pretty much be more than what they are capable of. Another myth that all individuals with autism are geniuses or have savant abilities. So this means, you know, I think in media a lot of times, or, you know, like even in Hollywood, if you think of Rain Man, right, you know, they kind of glorify it and show you like, oh, this person is ASD and they have these really profound and great genius-like abilities. And that's not always entirely true. Now, of course, there are ASD individuals who are gifted. There are savants inside of the ASD population. About 10% people actually do have those abilities. And what that means is they really excel in a certain area. We call these splinter skills. So they really excel in about one or two areas. And this kind of goes back also to when I was talking about the diagnostic criteria of having really fixated interest. So if they have a really strong interest, I mean, you bet they're going to know everything about a certain interest, right? If their interest is piano, they're probably going to become extraordinary piano players. Now, IQ, in terms of intelligence, can be really hard to evaluate in an ASD individual. And the reason for that is a lot of standardized tests nowadays that evaluate for IQ uses questions that are around language use and interpersonal analysis. So you're asking a person who has difficulty with language and with interpersonal skills, and you're trying to test their IQ based off of that. So you're going to undoubtedly get some type of misrepresentation of that person's intelligence because they already struggle with these types of social skills. Individuals with autism can't stand to be touched. This is a common one that I hear a lot of times. And you hear about, like the child lashing out or, someone being overly aggressive. And I actually talk about aggression in another slide. But the truth is, although this can be true for some individuals with ASD who may have highly, sensitive sensitivities to social situations or to certain environments, but many people with autism actually really welcome physical touch. Now, just like with any person, you would have preference as to who those people can touch you are. So just like any other person who's neurotypical, those on the spectrum also too can be really specific about who they allow to become physically close with them. Lastly, don't assume that an individual can't be touched, but it's always very smart to ask. Individuals with autism are cold and lack feelings of empathy. So this one comes from the understanding for people that, they have difficulties with emotions or they have difficulties connecting with people. So they couldn't possibly know what empathy is, right? And that's not true. Empathy can be expressed with a person who has autism. But the way that that empathy could be expressed may not be the typical way that we would. So for example, an expression of empathy might be just eye contact. This could be something that the individuals worked really hard on and can't normally do on a regular basis. But that look at, at their parent's face for a couple seconds, that could definitely be their way of expressing empathy. Parallel play, maybe they're not playing with their sibling in a cooperative game, but they're playing next to them. At least they're doing their own thing and being present with them in the same room. Gesturing, such as hand leading, and then also sometimes just simple sounds and verbalizations can be ways of expressing empathy. Now, some people with empathy on the spectrum can also feel these types of emotions a lot stronger than neurotypical individuals. And of course, individuals who have autism can form very meaningful relationships with friends and family members. So as I mentioned, another myth is individuals with autism are all aggressive. Now, this is just absolutely not true. Aggression, of course, can be present in any kind of person, but rarely is aggression done intentionally to harm. Now, in the instances where you might see an individual with some aggression, it's probably due to distress or any last resort ways of communication. They've kind of exhausted all their ways to tell you, I don't like that. And aggression's kind of that last way to communicate it to someone. So this also goes back to the criteria, right? They lack communication skills to express their needs. And sometimes it can also be triggered by an overload and just environmental demands that are coming from them. People with autism are all alike. And the truth is autism, like I mentioned, is a wide-ranging spectrum. It's a huge, long, wide spectrum. It goes from people who are high functioning, who need minimal support, to lower functioning, who need consistent support. You have individuals who are nonverbal. You have individuals who can do 1-2 words consistently, right? And then you have individuals who are fully verbal. And then receptive communication can vary as well. You might have someone who can listen and understand and execute multi-step directions. Or you might have a child who could only follow one-step directions. So autism is definitely a huge spectrum. Every individual on there is very special in their own way. Okay, that's all I have. CK, I will turn that over to you now. Thank you everyone for attending. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to CK to get my contact information.
Wow, that's a great introduction. Now we know a big picture and also a lot of details. If anybody have a question for Jackie, feel free to contact me, or if you wrote down the email and information, you can contact her directly. I was trying to play around the poll, but for some reason it didn't work. I just want to ask one thing before I started the movie. Do we need intermissions? So do you expect any audience in your family who may need a regular break? Because this film is on the long side, which is almost 2 hours long. No? Now I got the input. So let's go ahead all the way. So you just feel free to grab your popcorn or a cup of tea. So don't worry about that. So everybody, make sure you come back after 4:30, which Pauline Hsueh will guide us through the Q&A session, and you can also express what you think about the film. And I suggest we go by whatever language you prefer, you feel comfortable, either Mandarin, Taiwanese, English, or things I haven't even think about. So feel free to express yourself, and if you have a question, take notes, and you can ask Pauline. I'm not sure if Anna will stay after the screening.
If I have to leave for a little bit, I will definitely come back at 4:30.
Oh, okay, no problem. So prepare your question. We have expertise to give you some guide if you need help, or if you want to know more about this ASD. Okay, without further ado, let me share. Let's start over. So before we start, maybe let me thank our sponsor. So this is sponsored by Taiwan Cinema Toolkit, and this is the sole copy we have in California for this public screening. So because this is an early version they burned, so the quality is a little not as ideal, and also it's a kind of cropped, kind of not a full screen. So I need to manually adjust a little bit. So let me try if I can make it look good. All right, Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Okay, let me introduce Pauline. I knew Pauline has been very active in the community, and she also worked for this early development program, and she's a social worker who works at San Andreas Regional Center Early Start Program. In Mandarin, that's 儿童早疗，在加州政府发展服务部门。Let's welcome Pauline.
Hi, everyone. My name is Pauline Hsueh, working at San Andreas Regional Center Early Start Program. A couple of days ago, she contacted me and to participate in this Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Yeah, no, it's my first time. I feel very happy. Okay, now after watching this movie, if you would have any concerns for someone who may are at high risk for his or her developmental needs, please contact San Andreas Regional Center at the website. I'm going to type to the chat for everyone to take a look, or contact me to my email address. I would like to guide you for to our intake assessment through San Andreas Regional Center funding. Or you can contact Anna Wang. She is very professional, and then work with the San Andreas Regional Center very closely. Okay, yeah. So did you have any question would like to ask me? And I believe Anna is very, she has a very good heart to help everyone.
I just want to add, because I've been a parent for my son, who is now 31 years old, and he was diagnosed with autism when he was 3 years old. So through the nonprofit organization, Friends of Children with Special Needs, I have met, no less than 500 autistic kids of all ethnic groups. So yeah, if I can share any experience, I wouldn't say I'm an expert, but if I can share any experience, I'll be happy to do that. So, yeah. Let me ask first, are the families up in this gathering event regional center client families? If you're not, let me know.
Yes.
And as Pauline is working with the young children, but if your kid is older and even adult, and you have trouble accessing services that will help your family and your child, please let us know, and we will share with you all the resource that is available in the community. So yes, your whole family can thrive, hopefully. So yeah.
Yeah. There is a website for all the ages. Okay, even from the earliest, only from the 0 to 3, and then 0 to 5, and also for the school age, and then up to age of 21. But however, based on the school range, come to early start program is only up to age before age 18. So hopefully, family can come to early start program as soon as possible. Don't wait until after age 18.
Yeah, I think one of the things that is very hard for us Asian or Chinese family is to realize that our children need more help than other children, and it's
that's right.
With our culture, there is a shame and a stigma associated with having children with special needs, and that's why we started Friends of Children with Special Needs, or FCSN, 华人特色儿童之友, because we know that if we are alone, we have no power. But if we're grouped together and share experience and share resources, when we can truly help our children's future and take it to the better. And we don't need to hide from the rest of the community, and we should be together. We are strong and brave to go out to the community, to be integrated in the community, so that we can have people who will embrace our children. Our organization every year trains over 200 teenage volunteers, and a lot of the volunteers volunteer their time to have one-on-one program with our children and adults, not only children, but also adults, so that they will have friendship. They will have a particular class that will explore and develop their talent. As you can see, our children, according to Jackie, and also for the movie, you can see our children have splintered talent and abilities. There are part of the abilities they may need a lot of help, and they are a part of their abilities, which is better than yours and mine ability to do certain things. So those also needs to be developed. The part that they are weak in also needs to be developed, and we have volunteers to help with that. So we welcome anyone who wants more information to contact with me or our coordinator, support or coordinator. That information I already put on the chat. If you check on the chat, you will see I have put my contact information there, and our website information is also there. We have developed over 200 activities that any parent, no matter whether you belong with the FCSN membership or not, anyone across all ethnic groups can access these 200 plus activity, self-guided activities on YouTube or on Google Drive. Yeah. So yeah, so you can do it anytime you feel like it. It's a self-guided activities, and the whole family can do it together to have some fun. Talking about fun, this evening at 8 o'clock on Facebook, we have a live Christmas concert. It is hosted by a Dream Achievers band comprised of 3 members of young people with autism. One of them is my son, the one who plays saxophone and sings. So, you know, if you would like to enjoy some happy holiday music, singing and dancing with them, that would be a great time for you. At 8 o'clock, facebook.com/Dream Achievers Band. And it's all at the chat area that I typed there already. And yeah. So anything I can help you, if you have any question, if I have the answer or I have shared some experience, I will be happy to share with you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for Anna. Okay, so today, if you would have any question, please contact me for my email, and also you can look at Selandia Regional Center website. I would like to guide you, how to looking for resource. And so many family, when the child is young, they have the denial. They are always in the denial state. They do not want to, get to know my child. It's different than others. I always talk to my families. I always talk to them. Every child is different. That makes the world is much more beautiful. So please don't be hesitant. Just contact us. Contact friends of children with special needs. 特殊儿童之家. That is a wonderful resource for all of us, as a Pacific Asian.
I noticed there is a little question on the chat asking why is one of the child in the movies voice is all sound like a little kid instead of after they grow older and went through puberty, and how come the voice is still sound like a little kid? This Pauline, do you want me to share?
Please, yes, please share. Yeah, that is your expertise.
I'm not sure, but actually in our organization there are a couple of boys that talk like little kid, have a little kid's voice. Mm-hmm. But you know what I found out is if they want to, they can sound like an old cow too.
Yes.
they can have a very deep voice too, but they choose to sound like a little kid.
Yes.
Actually, I think our kids have certain preference that we don't understand. My son, I was sharing with you, he is 31 years old, but he did not like music. At least I thought he didn't like music. Every time he hears music, he covers his ears. And it turned out that he actually is very talented in music. And so he was not discovered to have music abilities and talent until he was 19 years old. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times we as parents, we don't really fully understand our children and their preference and their development. So when he covered his ears, I thought he didn't like music. But what happened is music was a sensory overload for him. Every time he hears music, his head is full of all different sounds and music he can hear at different level that we cannot hear. And so, after we found out that he actually knows music, how did we find that out? Every year in FCSM, we have a music camp. One year we had a music director that teach our kids how to play the recorder. The recorder is like a flute, 一个直的笛子. So, and that's very high pitch. So when she came in to teach our kids how to play the recorder, my son Lawrence was hiding in a corner. All the other kids were sitting around the teacher, but he was hiding in the corner. And he was shaking his head, cover his ears, and would not come and sit down. And very surprising, the teacher said, well, if he is comfortable standing in the corner, don't bother him. Let him stand in the corner. You never know, I want our children first to feel comfortable with the environment. Yes. If he is more comfortable, he will come and join us. She was absolutely right. But, as Chinese parents and Chinese teachers, usually we will force our kid to come and sit by the teacher, right? Because that means, everybody else, all the other students are participating, but my son is not participating. I cannot let him stand in the corner. But the teacher insisted to me and says, don't force him, let him stand in the corner. So after half an hour instruction, he picked up the recorder. All the other students don't even know where to put their fingers, but he played all the songs that the teacher was teaching. Everybody says, you're not watching. You are so far away in the corner. You cover your ears. How can you know how to play those songs? And that's how we discovered that we have to buy him earplugs. Whenever he hear music, first thing to do is put earplugs in his ear because he has to filter the music. It was too much of a stimuli for him, and it caused him to have sensory overload. When the teacher allowed him to have distance between the music, allow him to cover his ears, indeed, he was absorbing all the things that the teacher was teaching. And so to make a long story short, after about 2 months of lesson, he was performing all around the Bay Area. He had performed in China. He had performed in Hong Kong. He had performed in Washington, D.C., and also Toronto. Now, I totally agree with Jackie when she shared it. It's a myth that every autistic kid is a savant. That's not true. That's not true. But I do believe every autistic kid has special place of ability that we just have to discover and turn the key, unlock their talents and ability. That I truly believe. To different degree, they can be a great contributor to society. We just have to be patient and look where we're not looking. A lot of times we are looking in the commonplace for them to have talent and abilities. But indeed, we need to be patient and look at unlikely places for their abilities and talent. Another example is one of our children, nonverbal, completely nonverbal. And also at the music camp found her talent, and the teacher treasure her like the biggest treasure. She is nonverbal and have a lot of sensory and behavior issues. 2018, she won the Elite International Music Competition at Carnegie Hall, New York. And she is also one of the band members that you're gonna see tonight at Facebook Live at the Dream Achievers Band. So my son, her experience and her, that's Alice. Alice is very young. She won the competition when she was 18 years old. Now she just turned 21. So yeah, you never know. Our children have very unlikely talent. So every parent, especially Chinese parent, 哎呀，他们连讲话都不会，怎么可能会那么厉害？而且老师每一天都打电话来 complain about them causing trouble at school， 怎么可能他们会这样子？Indeed, the teacher that was teaching Alice for the first time came to our concert and saw Alice playing a award-winning piece, and she almost fainted because she did not see a little crazy girl running around, screaming, don't know how to communicate, but she sees this extraordinary pianist playing piano, and she was just almost fainted and cried and cried and cried. A lot of my son's teacher also did the same thing when they heard him play the instruments. But there are a lot of people that have certain abilities. A lot of times when people saw that Alice won the Elite International Music Competition, it says, "You're cured. You don't have autism anymore." But no, she is very typically autistic. I can say, because she still couldn't talk very much, and she still have her sensory challenges and issues. She still scream at different times, and some of them have to be controlled with medication, and some of the behaviors, because it's too much of a challenge for them to handle the environment in our world. So it's very interesting. This movie is called Twinkle Twinkle Little Stars, because, you know, in my experience, a lot of people will describe the autistic kids as coming from Cheng-Sheng的儿童, right? So they are coming from another planet, actually, and from another star. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. It is indeed a very good description of who they are, because they seem like they're put in our world, in our environment, but it's such a big challenge for them. It's like they're coming from outer space, and they're living in this unfriendly environment that gives them a lot of challenges. And so I think, you know, one time I tried to explain to some of my parents why I say that, is I said, well, imagine yourself right now, you don't know how to speak French, but you went to Paris. And so, but then, you know, you're afraid to show that you don't know how to speak French, and you don't know how to communicate with them. But you see somebody coming, trying to ask you for some direction. So what do? First thing, no eye contact. Don't look at them, because if I don't look at them, they won't come and ask me for something, right? So a lot of times, if you look at how our children not communicating, it's because they don't understand what you're asking. They don't understand language as the same way as you and me. That's why they don't look at you. They don't know what you want from them. So they're not looking at you, no eye contact. and they are trying to hide from you just so that you, a lot of times, because our children is being misunderstood, and so a lot of different things are forced onto them, and they are always being misunderstood. And I actually have to confess, I am the, it took me about 5 years before I understood that point. So I'm not very smart at picking those signals up from my son. So when I talk to my son, for example, you can talk to him and he will give you answers. But I wouldn't say he uses language like you or me, because I often explain something to him and I said, Lawrence, do you understand? And his answer is always yes, because language to him is just sounds coming out of my mouth. And he remembers sounds, because that's why he can sing Chinese, he can sing Spanish, he can sing English, many, many songs, because he remembers all the sounds of that song, including what we call language. But to him, it's all sound. So when I talk to him, all kinds of sounds come out of my mouth. And at the end of my explanation to him, I always ask, do you understand? So he remembered the sound. When I hear my mom's mouth coming out with a sound, do you understand? I have to give back the sound, yes. Then she will stop talking. If I give out the sound, no, then my mom will talk some more, make more sound. But then after many more minutes of making sound, my mom will make the sound, do you understand? And at that time, I better say yes, because I make the yes sound, she will go away happy and I don't have to listen to her anymore. So, you know, this actually took me a long time to figure out, because he is so good at faking understanding. So I just, a lot of times, I think parents will take a long time to understand their own child, but certainly we have to be open-minded. We don't want to have our own preconception and force it into our children. I won't waste any more time. I give one more example, and I really want all the parents to think very hard about this. Our parents want us to be PhD. Our parents want us to have a college degree, right? At least a college degree. So we also give up anything to have our special kid get a high school diploma, get a college degree, get a graduate degree. And a lot of times I can, through my experience, is that really truly good for the child? Or do you want them to actually be able to hold on to a job, no matter what kind of job, that they are able, like everybody else, to hold on a job and lead a happy life? If that is your goal, don't force them to go to college if that's not actually something that will make them happy. It may make you happy, but it's certainly not gonna make a lot of our autistic kids happy. So just something to think about. Okay, I'll stop talking now. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Anna.
I would like to invite the audience, see if you can talk about the film itself. Even you don't have kids with special needs. And what do you think when you watch this movie? And on the artistic point of this movie, I think this is a special movie. I think the painting, music was strongly emphasized in this film. And how do you view this movie as just an audience? See if any anybody in the session want to say something? Yeah, you're free to unmute yourself and share what you think.
Maybe 每个人很害羞的。
Oh,
Hi.
Jen.
Yes.
Jen, you want to say something?
I want to say just a few things. I really appreciate the movie. My son, he's 25. Actually, he watched the movie with me today together. I really wanted to say that what we see on the screen is so familiar. You know, a lot of what's happening in the movie is what we have go through. I wish I watched this maybe, 20 years ago, then I probably would not go through a lot of, try to figure out a lot of things on my own, which took very precious time. As Anna said, Anna, you described that yes and no question, the answers, it's almost identical to my son. He always looking at me and giving me the answer that I wanted so he can get out of the conversations. Yeah, I could let him go. That his goal. It's not understanding. It's just like, let's get over this. Whatever answer you wanted. If you want a no, I'll give you a no. If you want a yes, I'll give you a yes. That was one thing. Another one is that I watched the movie, the kids drawing. My son Mark draws just like that kid. Like I remember his high school art teacher used to say he is just like Picasso, like the way that they draw. And I saw on the movie that they went to the Philadelphia Art Museum, right? We live in Philadelphia, so it's so familiar there. And the drawings that they draw, oh, my gosh, very, very similar styles, like very bright color and very, very abstract and very, like the color is so vivid, I should share some of his drawings with you. I knew your emails now, Anna, maybe,
Yeah.
you can see it, and it's just amazing. I think the experience, I knew that, he has a lot of issues like anxiety, very typical autism issues. But on the other hand, he can play so many hymnals, like the Bible hymnals without the music, because he hears it, he plays it. So he could be the accompanist for any kind of, like a worship instantly, because he heard the song before and he knows how to play it.
Yeah, your son is like my son.
Yes. I hope that, maybe you can, I think we will go see your dream,
Achievement Band?
Yeah, the Facebook event. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for this event. I really enjoyed it. Thank you all.
It's very, very nice to listen, to know what you think about the movie. And I have a side note. Because I watched the movie with the Chinese subtitles, so we noticed that in the English version, there are some notes were left out, right? So I encourage people who are really interested to this movie to get a copy of this Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. It's available. You can search the internet. It's not difficult. I think it's not out of print yet, so you can get a copy. And also, I would strongly suggest to say the music. This is the first thing I noticed this film through the soundtrack, and this is besides the guitar playing and singing of the kids, also the music, the songs also composed by Cheng-Sheng, which is a very, very good folk songwriter in Taiwan. So this soundtrack is very good too. And another thing is from the director Lin Zhengsheng. When I contacted him about 2.5 years ago, he was recommending me to get a copy from him, which is an educational public screening version of his DVD, and you can have unlimited playing time when you get his copy. And I think the quality should be better than the DVD we play today. So I recommend FCSN to get a copy, so you can play it at your pace and for many time to that parents or students or siblings they can enjoy it. It's a very nice movie.
Thank you. Yeah.
So anyone want to say something or any more questions before I bring up my slides again? Yeah. So I think we're doing great in time, and and I think that before I hand back to Pauline, I'd like to, I don't know how okay, this is, yeah, you notice the color, what a great, a lot of imaginations from their work. So again, we want to thank our special guests and the speakers, Pauline, Jackie, and Anna, to be with us. And we thank you for the audience. And there's a little feedback survey. And I think we'll bring up this because we call ourselves a two-way theater. We like to have some way of a two-way communication. And this is also a chance you can feedback not only to the event, also feedback to the film itself. For example, in the survey, you have a chance to rate the movie 0 to 10 and among with some other fun questions. So please fill out the form and submit soon. So that's all I want to say. And again, next week, my dear father, and I post in the chat, you can register as early as possible and you'll get a reminder. Okay, I think that's what I want to say. Thank you very much.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.